I will be reading from the first speech that MLK gave in which he talked about Vietnam. This is the anniversary, April 4th, 1967, and then exactly 1 year later he was shot.
Where was the speech given? Was
It was at Riverside Church in New York City to a gathering of anti-war, both ministers and lay people. So very early to be protesting the war publicly as he was doing, and it turned a lot of heads when that he was changing from a straight civil rights discussion.
Well, today is the 50th anniversary of the speech that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave at Riverside Church in New York, a speech entitled Beyond Vietnam. While his speech, I Have a Dream, gets the most publicity, in fact, his most compelling speech, I believe, was the Beyond Vietnam speech. In that speech, he formally broke with the U.S. government's policy in Vietnam. He came out militantly opposed to the war, opposed to U.S. involvement. He got absolute hell from it, from the establishment, from the New York Times to the Washington Post, to all sorts of people in the government, as well as in the civil rights movement at the time. It was an incredibly principled move on his part. It invigorated the anti-war movement, and, in my opinion, put Dr. King in history. And by the time he gave it the speech, not only was he well known for I Have a Dream, but he had also received the Nobel Prize. And so when he went against the establishment and spoke out against the war in Vietnam, he had such moral authority, and yet the establishment came down very hard on him.
A time comes when silence is betrayal, end quote. That time has come for us in relation to Vietnam. The truth of these words is beyond doubt, but the mission to which we call us is a most difficult one. Even when pressed by the demands of inner truth, men do not easily assume the task of opposing their government's policy, especially in time of war. Some of us who have already begun to break the silence of the night have found that the calling to speak is often a vocation of agony, but we must speak.
Since I am a preacher by trade, I suppose it is not surprising that I have 7 major reasons for bringing Vietnam into the field of my moral vision. Then came the build-up in Vietnam, and I watched the program broken and eviscerated as if it were some idle political plaything of a society gone mad on war. The necessary funds or energies in the rehabilitation of its poor, so long as adventures like Vietnam continue to draw men and skills and money like some demonic, destructive suction tube.
The Vietnamese people proclaimed their own independence in 1945 after a combined French and Japanese occupation. Even though they quoted the American Declaration of Independence in their own document of freedom, we refused to recognize them. Instead, we decided to support France in its reconquest of her former colony. Our government felt that the Vietnamese people were not ready for independence, and we again fell victim to the deadly Western arrogance that has poisoned the international atmosphere for so long.
But instead, there came the United States, determined that Ho should not unify the temporarily divided nation, and the peasants watched again as we supported one of the most vicious dictators of modern time, a chosen man, President Diem. The peasants watched and cringed as Diem ruthlessly routed out all opposition, supported their extortionist landlords, and refused even to discuss reunification with the North. The only change came from America as we increased our troop commitments in support of governments which were singularly corrupt, inept, without popular support. If we will but make the right choice, we will be able to speed up the day all over America and all over the world when justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.